Good evening, folks, and welcome to this meeting of Finance Scrutiny. I've got my little script, which I have to read out before we can start. The induction loop is now operative. Members and officers, please remember to switch microphones on and speak directly into the microphone and switch off again after speaking. Reporting officers using Teams, I don't know we have any this evening, do we?
There's none, no.
No, okay, don't worry about that then. The meeting this evening will be live streamed to the public, and a recording of the meeting will be available on the Council's website within 24 hours of the meeting. Any exempt private items on the agenda, and we do have 2 of those, live stream will cease prior to the meeting moving into private. There might be a short delay. If I could just remind you that the write-off report, which was originally intended to be taken in private, is now going to be in public. Okay, off we go then. Have we any apologies? We have some substitutes, haven't we?
Yeah. Yes, Chair. We've received apologies from Rahana Malik, who's been substituted by Councillor Chowdhury, and Councillor Wynne, who's been substituted by Councillor Ahmed.
Thank you. You have one set of minutes from the 24th of April. May I sign those as a true record of the meeting? Nobody got any problem with them? Okay, thank you. I'll deal with that later.
And we've also got those ones on the
Sorry?
on the 20th. You should have the 20th of May minutes as well.
Oh, sorry, yes, we've also got the minutes from the 20th of May. Again, I'll assume if there are no objections, I'll assume you're happy for me to sign them. I don't think there's any urgent business that's not already on the agenda. We haven't any references from other bodies. There's one update from me. I've had a conversation earlier this evening with Rob Roach, and we have agreed that the reporting of budget monitoring situations, which we receive 4 times a year, could be more clearly set out and more understandably laid before us. Rob is going to have a conversation with Dev Gopal and put together a plan to make the whole thing a lot more readable, a lot more understandable, and a lot less foggy. It's hoped that that new format may be available for the 31st of July meeting, but I have made it clear from our point of view that that should not be seen as a deadline, because it's better to get it right than it is to get it quickly. So unless anyone has any objections, I'll continue to liaise with Rob and Dev with a view to putting together more simple and easily understood reports. And when we get the first in the new version, then you'll have an opportunity to see whether Rob and Dev's efforts have been successful or whether they haven't. But I do take the view, as Rob agrees, that the current way of reporting leads members to, in fact, not bother to read quite a lot of the information because it's far too complicated. So let's see if we can come up with a better solution. I'll try and keep you posted at future meetings as how that's going on. Meanwhile, does Dev have any finance updates he wishes to bring to our attention?
So, Chair, we are going to bring the outturn report to the executive. So there's a meeting on the 19th for FRG, and we'll be presenting the outturn report. So at this stage, I would rather wait because that report will be coming out. But if I may, Chair, is because we are tight in the deadline, so the deadline for the FRG is report to be dispatched tomorrow. The deadline for the executive report is Friday. So if you're agreeable, I will send FRG and executive at the same time, which is going to be Friday, if that's okay.
Thank you for that. So moving on then, unless anyone's got any questions or comments on that. No, thank you. Stage update. This again is an oral report, I believe. Who's giving it for us, please?
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. This is a brief verbal update on the stage. Members will remember that the stage is a £120 million town centre regeneration project, including 3 residential towers, a substantial multi-purpose hub, and public realm improvements. The project is underpinned by £20 million of levelling up funding. The residential tower design needs approval from the building safety regulator before work can start on that aspect. Our BSR application was submitted in July last year and should have been determined by November. Due to lack of resources at the BCR, it remains undetermined. The latest position is a request by the BCR for a 3rd extension of time until July the 11th. The BSR have been unresponsive despite lobbying at ministerial and senior civil servant levels. They finally agreed to meet our design team last week and have tabled a number of requests for additional information. However, based on that meeting, we are fairly confident of a positive determination this summer. This extension of time will obviously impact on the programme and on the budget, but the project team have put contingencies in place to mitigate against that. So that's the update, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Shaw.
Yeah, well, you say that other projects will be looked at to help out with the stage. What are the projects, if any? Secondly, basically it's on hold at the moment, waiting for the fire certificate determination and everything else. What I'm confused about is why we can't get on with the groundwork up to slab level on the first blocks, because the worst what can happen with that would be your dry risers could be affected on your fire certificate. So why don't we come to an halt nearly on it?
So to answer your question in 2 parts, Councillor Shaw.
Yeah.
In terms of contingency, we work very closely with the finance team, and at this moment in time, there is no danger of us having to cancel any other projects to fund this one. One of the upsides, perhaps, of the delay is that residential sale prices continue to rise, and we have a robust cost plan, which means that the negative impact will hopefully not be material. In terms of the second question, the regulations are quite clear. Until you have clearance, you can't start anything.
If I could, me and you will have a discussion about what's in the regulations, whether you can start or not. But I'm getting a bit concerned because the programme we've got with the contractors, does that programme allow for extensions of the time through this kind of fault, or are they going to charge us for extra prelims on top of the existing programme?
We have been burning contingency at the rate of around about £100,000 per month, obviously, but that's within our contingency allowance.
Okay, yes.
You mentioned the delay is going to cost us, so other than some of the contingency you're talking about, what other financial impact will this delay cost, and how is that going to be sourced?
Well, it's obviously an extension of time, and therefore we will have to revalidate the cost plan. At the moment, our best guess is that the negative impact in terms of the capital project is less than £1 million. Well, as things stand at the moment, there is no need for further subsidy from the council, and We have substantial contingencies within the project. We have some value engineering opportunities, and as I say, it's partially offset by a forecast increased income from residential sales. I can't commit to a number.
Go up. We don't know how much the prices are going to go up.
Anybody else? Okay, then it's my turn. At the last update, we agreed to write a letter to the Chief Executive and the Leader of the Council, asking them to seek assistance from the 3 Luton parliamentarians and from the Local Government Association to put pressure on the government to do something about these horrendous delays, which are obviously affecting other local authorities as well. I have to say I have not received either an acknowledgement nor a reply to that request, and I depreciate that position. I would have thought that at least an acknowledgement would have been received, if not a detailed explanation of what they were doing about it. But there you go.
Chair, I'm happy to share the replies that both our MP and our former Chief Exec received from the Minister of State and from the senior civil servant.
Can you do that then, please?
Yep, I'll do that immediately.
Okay.
Basically, they said, we're very busy, we're very sorry.
Yeah, we're very sorry doesn't actually pay the bills, does it?
It certainly doesn't, Chair.
No. Okay, well, if you'd share that information with all the members, I'd be very grateful. Thank you very much for that.
Super, will do.
In the meantime, thank you for the update. No doubt you'll let us know whether we actually get the opportunity to move forward with this very important project.
Yes, I'll be happy to bring an update as soon as we have some clarity on the determination.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you all.
Okay, I don't think we need to actually do anything apart from thank Roger for the update and note what he's been telling us. So we move on to adult social care debt write-offs. Let me find the right page. Thank you. You're doing this one for us, are you? Thank you.
Yeah, I am. So thank you, Chair. So I'm Jill Britton. I'm the Director of Adult Social Care, and this in some ways is a joint paper from myself and from Dev Copol, who's the Head of Finance, as the Revenue and Benefits team sits in his service area. So this report is to provide an update on a series of write-offs of debt owing each of over £10,000, which we're required to take to the executive. So all of these debts have been accrued for some years, and the debt recovery team was put in place in 2019, and there was a backlog of debt at that time, so that has been growing over the period. These debts cannot be paid as all of the individuals are now deceased and have no assets in their estates and have no related beneficiaries to their estates that the council can make a claim against. The debts in total amount to £455,000. Since the team has been in place, there's been a vast reduction in debts being put forward for write-off due to the increased recovery action and the efficient processes that are now in place. However, just would like to make a comment, because you asked me separately by email, Councillor Franks, whether the team were now fully in place. So the debt recovery team is now fully in place. However, there has been increasing invoices and debt recovery needed since 2019, with purely with the growth in adult social care and the number of people contributing to that care. And so the team are looking at putting forward a business case for increased resources so that the decisions can be made more efficiently. And that's the update that I had from Director of Finance this afternoon.
Thank you. Yes, so
Thank you, Chair. What steps are in place now to make sure this kind of large debt build-up doesn't happen again?
So it's sometimes challenging. We definitely always try to get a deferred payment made on any residence that an individual might have as they go into long-term care and to a residential or nursing care home. However, it is sometimes really challenging. So, for example, one of the packages that we refer to, the individual's power of attorney would not cooperate with the council, would not pay the debts, would not submit all the forms. And then as we moved, we actually reported that individual to the Office of the Public Guardian, because we also noted that the individual's savings had been depleted and they wouldn't provide us an explanation for that. So we do pursue things very hardly, but unfortunately the individual died before the Office of Public Guardian findings and the safeguardings could be concluded, and therefore the power of attorney was then appointed as the executive of the will and failed to cooperate with us, and so we have no choice but to write off the debt because there is nowhere to go to.
Sorry, just one more. How does writing off this 450 or 5,000 affect the council's finances or services going forward?
So these particular debts have been classed as bad debt and put onto previous years' financial accounts, and so they will not affect the outturn for last year or for the coming year.
yes, Councillor Shaw.
Just a bit surprised at the councillor's statement, how we can put into place to make sure this doesn't happen again. And 80%, if you add up the figures on there, are people what have died with no estate to claim the debt off. So it'd be very difficult to do. I know some politicians like to live in this real world where they can throw stones around, but the fact is 8% of them people have died with no estate, and the 4 of the others are statute barred through collecting the debt. So unless you come up with a magic way as a councillor to get the money off the people what have died with no estate, we'd fully support that. But otherwise, I'll be moving that we accept the list as it is, and if we have to, we'll vote on it.
Yes, Councillor Khan.
Yeah, Tom, this is not about politics, it's about governance, it's about prevention.
Of course it is when you said that.
So what surprises me, in the report, it mentions the lack of focus was due to changes at the senior team level. Now that is concerning, because it shouldn't be confined to people. There should be a system in place which makes sure that we have a robust way of assessing people, and then we are chasing people within time. Yes, there will be some cases where people may die, but when you're making the assessment, you're making the judgment, and then you are trying to put a recovery system in place. What this report says, because there was lack of that because of changes at senior level, and that is concerning to me. How did we not have a system in place before now? What you're saying now, there's a team in place and it won't happen again? Can you explain before and after?
So the majority of this debt kind of arose before. I've been here for 2 years, and there's only, I think, 3 items that have happened in the last 3 years. In the last 2 years since I've been here, I can't say what happened before I was here, but that's what I'm saying. This apparently was perhaps not as robust going back a long time ago, so 2019, 6 years ago. And as the team is working through that aged debt, they're finding that some of that is unrecoverable, but it is quite a long time ago that that took place.
Making sure that we have systems in place, and it shouldn't be limited to people. Tomorrow, if we find, someone leaving, it shouldn't be based on an individual looking after a system. It should be system itself governing.
Absolutely, Councillor Khan. It's just unfortunate I'm not able to comment on the system prior to I was here. We are now working very closely with that team to review all of our processes in terms of financial assessment, to ensure that we are making those financial assessments quickly, people aren't getting into debt in the first place, and that we are recovering debt where it takes place. And as I say, the service is now fully staffed, and we might look to expand that given the level of demand that is coming through to that service.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to say, well done to the team that's been set up now and making sure what happened in 2019 previous that doesn't happen again. I want to say, I support this report for the executive to adopt it. Thank you.
Hi, Jill. Just quickly, I wanted to ask, you say, you're going to be writing off debts worth more than 10,000. I'm just wondering, do we have any debts which are under 10,000 that's still outstanding?
So there are indeed debts that we occasionally need to write off of under £10,000, where someone has died before they have finished making their repayment plan, etc. But I don't have the total figure of that to hand, but it's only debts of over £10,000 which go to the executive, and so that's why that's included in this report.
So do we know when that assessment will be made in terms of how much the total sort of write-offs for under 10,000 is?
I'd need to get those figures from finance.
Yeah, perhaps you could email members to let them know the total amount over the same period that was written off under delegated powers as being under £10,000. I think that would be helpful information.
We also look at, knowing the cost of care now, the monthly cost of someone going into care, and we could be paying that bill. They'd only have to be in care 2 or 3 months before they can go over the £10,000 mark with some of them. I'm just wondering whether it's whether it's time, knowing the cost of care, for the council to have a look at that, re-look at that figure, to see what can be written off without it coming to scrutiny and everything else. I don't know what the figure would be at the moment, but I'd thought 4 months care, something like that.
Okay, Councillor Malik.
Couple of things I want to ask you about. As far as I know, there is a special team, recovery team council have now. Is that team still working, that is in place to recover these debts? Also, why this took that long to escalate these debts to write off? Like I can see in this report, there are some from 2012 as well.
So the team is in place and is fully resourced, and I think it's the fact that of getting that team in place and fully resourced that has brought the attention to some of those aged debts, so that then they could come through formally. That I think they have been signed off at the right time by the director at that time, but they've not been brought through to executive, and so there's essentially this is a bit of a catch-up period to do that now that we've got that team fully in place and they're fully operational.
Councillor Hussain.
colleagues are saying really that we should accept the report. That this has been the case, as far as I know, previously, because the costs are going up and people do die without no state, and the executive can do it up to 10,000 in constitution, but if it's a larger debt, then it has to come here. So, you know, this is nothing new that has happened. This is council has statutory duty to look after people when they are in care. There is no way of escaping. Whether they have got a state or not, it has to be done.
Yes, Councillor Farouk.
Just to follow on Mr. Hussain and Tom Shaw, that are we pretty sure that we have a system in a place that it doesn't happen in future again?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, there's definitely a system in place for recovering the debt and for ensuring that people know what they are responsible for paying for, and for reviewing that and making sure that that happens. But as we've mentioned, it is rather difficult to say that it would never happen again, given the circumstances that arise from those individuals.
Thank you, Dev.
Yeah, just to put a little bit of more context, I think overall the council debt, we have like council tax, we make a provision for non-collection, the business rate we make a provision for non-collection, parking debt is another area where sometimes we should ticket and it's not easy to collect. So I agree with members, every penny we collect, that's important because that's additional money. There are two areas of debt in the council which are quite difficult, adult social care is being one of them, and housing for temporary accommodation. So those are difficult because we've got vulnerable people who are using the service. One of the things I would say going forward absolutely will bring regular report. So at least if you look at the list here, some goes 10, 12 years. So if you take 455 divided by 10, we're talking of 45,000 per year. And Jill, correct me if I'm wrong, the amount of new debt we are raising is 91K and there's 63 people, so total is around 5.7 million of income. And that's the magnitude of income we are raising. So the point I'm making here is when you put it into context, although 455, absolutely lots of money, but you have to look into context. So we'll do, as Jill said, some of the debt we are going to put a business case if we can recover it as early as possible, because when there's delay sometimes there's a risk there. So we'll do that as well, and we'll bring in regular report for write-off every year. But coming back to the point whether it will happen again, there's always a risk that out of £100, depending on the nature of the debt, like adult social care, there is quite a high level of bad debt, and in any business there will be. And every year we make a provision, so when it's getting older than 6 months or 9 months, we try to make a provision. So that's why in the accounts we've already provided for. So that's just to give a bit of context, but still we'll be working quite hard to make sure that we track those debt, we recover those debt, and those where we can recover, we try to recover them as soon as possible. Yeah, thanks, Chair.
There's something in all this that I don't quite see, to be honest. The no assets following death is the overwhelming majority of the cases where you're asking to write off debts. Are we to assume that these individuals were assessed financially as being entitled to care at public expense? And if that is the case, how come all of a sudden when they die, the cost of providing them with that care becomes a debt? I don't understand how that occurs. Can you explain?
So all of these individuals will have been assessed as needing to contribute to their care to a lesser or greater extent. So either up to the threshold, or perhaps they were fully self-funders and have had a deferred payment. So sometimes self-funders, if you go into residential care, put their homes against their debt. and so the debt isn't paid until they sell their home. And sometimes, you know, there is not sufficient in the estate in order to fully pay off all of the debt. So if your debt's 100,000, you sell your house for 90,000, then there will be 10,000 that we'll need to write off. So these individuals have, may have been partly funded by the council, or they would have been wholly funded themselves. So these are not people, you know, who are not contributing. But sometimes, as you say, the assets don't always meet the level of debt that they've, or the level of care that they have been exposed to, where we considered that they were contributing to that, if that makes sense.
If their assessment was on the basis that they had a home which would be sold to pay their contribution towards their care, what kind of home do you sell that doesn't produce £14,000?
So that is the amount of debt that's left that we are writing off. That might not have been the total amount of debt that they had.
So the total amount would have been much higher.
But they would have paid that element, and this is just what's left on their books due to the council that they're not able to pay.
Thank you, that's much clearer, beginning to understand now. Anybody else, any questions or comments?
She moved a recommendation a few minutes ago. Yes, because of the escalating costs of private care and care, that a report should come back to this committee where we can look at a reasonable cost, a reasonable figure for the write-off of debt to save this report coming back. Because at the moment you can get, your care can be £625 a week in some places. It doesn't take you long to get up to £10,000, especially if you've got no assets. But just coming backwards and forwards is a bit stupid. The figure was probably all right 10 years ago, but the figure now is completely out of kilter with what the actual costs are. So I suggest that we have a report back, and I'll move, I'm sure someone will second, the report comes back to us so we can make a recommendation to the executive of a reasonable figure alongside what can go to the portfolio holder to be written off. All right?
Thank you. That's seconded by Councillor Hussain. I don't think I've got a personal problem with that. Everybody happy? Thank you very much for that, and thanks for the report. Now, sadly, I'm working on an out-of-date agenda. I think the next item we've got is our work programme, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So, has anybody got any suggestions to add or remove any of the items on our future work programme? Okay, I've got a couple. Due to executive on the 21st of July is a report on the Luton Rising 10-year strategy. Given the complications that have arisen since the DCO has been approved and the continuing discussions between Luton Rising and the operating company, it just seemed to me that it might be appropriate for that to come to our 19th of June meeting if it's available in time. the inclusive economy strategy due to go to executive on the 8th of September, the only appropriate FRG meeting before that would be 31st of July. Whether that's going to be available in time is difficult to know, but it'd be interesting to see that, particularly if it pertains to the employment plan, because we have a number of developments which could potentially produce significant employment for the town's population. Some of those opportunities are likely to be missed by the further development of warehouses that employ very few people. So if that report is likely to be available for our 31st of July meeting, that could be helpful.
Chair, that's going to OSB on the 28th of July.
Okay, it's going to OSB, that's fine, thank you very much for that.
Just a question on why is a Foxhall Board business plan coming to a council committee? I'd have thought the only place it would have come, because it's classed as a private company, would have been audit and governance to make sure that everything, that the audited programme of the company was taken there. But why would it come to a scrutiny board? It's absolutely nothing to do with the council on paper.
Indeed it does. It has everything to do with the council's finances, and
yes,
finance scrutiny is here to examine the council's finances.
Well, with what's going on with your group and Foxhall Homes, where the investigation's taking place at the moment, I feel very concerned that it's being made political, Foxhall Homes. I'd like to take some legal advice on why it's coming here instead of to audit and governance.
Well, you're welcome to take your legal advice. I can't see any problem with that at all. But in the meantime, I would like it to come to FRG, and I believe it is already on our work programme.
I will move that till we've got the legal advice on where it should go, that should be left alone till that legal advice is received.
Yeah, and I second that.
So you do not want Foxhall Homes business plan to be examined by Scrutiny Finance?
I want it examined by audit and governance where it's supposed to be examined.
But Scrutiny is the place.
I've moved it.
Yeah, okay, so if you want to deny finance scrutiny for doing its job, then you're entitled to move that. Hang on a second, I've got Councillor Khan trying to get in here.
Well, I can't see a problem because we've done it in the past. Why is it all of a sudden changing? It's to do with finances, and scrutiny gets an opportunity to scrutinize and pass a recommendation on the business plan. It's just simple as that. So I don't know what the political angle you're talking about. So I can't see a reason why you shouldn't be coming to this.
Because at the moment it goes to the shareholders group, so the council gets one comment. What Councillor Franks said is completely wrong. It goes to the shareholders group, so it can comment on there, which is council officers and council members. Then it goes to audit and governance, so it can be commented on audit and governance. And now you're fetching it here as well. What's this, so they can have a third bite of the cherry?
Why can't it? Why shouldn't it?
Eh?
Why shouldn't it?
I've got concern it's been turned into political football, your words earlier, on what's with the complaints and the investigations what are going on now about the release of documents and Foxhall Homes.
Well, we certainly look at the finances, nothing else, Tom.
In the past, the business plans of the council's two principal subsidiaries, London Luton Airport Limited and Foxhall Homes Limited, have always come to finance scrutiny. And if you want to change that process, then I suggest you actually give us a reason why it should be not on a scrutiny finance agenda.
Because with the investigations what are going on before the reports go anywhere, I would rather that it went to audit and governance and the shareholders group. There are very serious allegations what have been made, the investigations still aren't finished with, and it's your group what has been accused of making those releasing those papers. I'd like to see that investigation finished.
That investigation has nothing at all to do with the company's finances. Yes, Councillor Hussain.
I mean, one of the easiest thing really is, it would be in the Constitution what goes in where, right? And if it's in the Constitution, then unless we change, the Constitution, then that would be. If it only goes to the urgent governors according to the Constitution, then we can check that out. Until that's checked, it doesn't go, to any other committee until this. If it is in the Constitution, then be it may.
Well, it most certainly is in the Constitution. The whole function of scrutiny finance is to examine the council's finances, and the finances of the two principal subsidiaries are key to the council's finances. I just don't see any sense in denying the scrutiny its proper function to look at the council's finances. However, are you still moving your motion? Microphone, please.
Receiving advice of committee services on where it should go, then we will be happy with when that advice has been given.
Thank you. I will seek that advice. Moving on. What have we got? I'm looking at the Youth Justice Plan, which is due for the 8th of September executive. I assume that will go to the Crime and Disorder Committee.
No,
It's going to Children's Services Scrutiny. Fine, that's understand, no problem with that. And that's all I've got to say on the work programme, unless anyone's got any further comments, questions, additions, deletions. No? In that case, I think this is the point where we need to move into private. Have I got that right, Angela?
That's right.
Everybody happy that I move the appropriate resolution to do that?